All right, I think we can get into it. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today for this conversation on ICIJ's latest investigation, the coin laundry. I'm Carmen Molina Acosta, ICIJ's digital producer. Today, I'm happy to be joined by Spencer Woodman, the lead reporter on the coin laundry project. For the past 10 months, he's been coordinating with our partners around the world to investigate cryptocurrency. For those of you who might not know ICIJ, we're the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. We're a global nonprofit that spearheads big collaborative investigations with hundreds of journalists around the world working to reveal broken international systems. Today, we're talking about the coin laundry, ICIJ's latest investigation, which exposed how cryptocurrency has become the foundation of a new shadow economy. The project reveals how criminals, from scam operators and hackers to cartels and oligarchs, have moved billions of dollars through crypto exchanges so quickly that regulators and compliance officers can't keep up. It's a kind of journalism only ICIJ can do. It took months of collaboration between reporters, data analysts, and experts around the world to follow money that most people thought couldn't be traced. Before we start, I wanted to let you all know that this conversation is being recorded and there will be an opportunity to submit questions. We're very excited to have a lot of people here, which means we may not get to everything, but we will do our best. So to cover as much as we can, we're going to get straight into it. Spencer, to start us off, can you tell us a bit about where this project came from?
Sure thing. Thanks, Carmen. Um, as some of you may know, ICIJ has been investigating financial crime and issues relating to money laundering for well over a decade at this point. And a lot of that has been focused on the offshore financial sector, where large corporations and wealthy individuals and sometimes criminals go to hide or move assets or minimize taxes and stuff like that. So, kind of over the past few years, I started noticing there were more cryptocurrency addresses, and these are the kind of things that are analogous to bank account numbers in the crypto world that were appearing in the documents that we were looking at from offshore jurisdictions, often relating to shell companies and deals like that. Most recently, we did or in 2023 at least, we did a project called Cyprus Confidential, and there were some what I found to be very interesting cryptocurrency addresses in that batch of documents. So I started asking around and saying, hey, look, I've heard crypto has a public element to it. What can we do with these addresses? And slowly, I kind of started to realize that there is quite a bit you can do, but it requires the right tools and the right expertise. I could talk for the entire hour about the kind of making of this investigation because it was very difficult and the learning curve was steep. But before long, we developed a methodology around identifying illicit wallets or wallet addresses, cryptocurrency wallet addresses tied to high risk activity, and then tracing the sometimes inward, often outward flows of those assets on the public ledger of cryptocurrency, the public records that these transactions create in the what's called the blockchain, to basically follow the money and report on the destinations and the activity that we found.
Yeah, so Spencer, to sort of backtrack a little for people who might not be as familiar as you are, having been in this world for 10 months, when we talk about cryptocurrency and crypto exchanges, what exactly are we talking about and how is it different than sort of other financial systems we sometimes investigate, like banks?
Sure. So try to give the most succinct answer I can here. I mean, cryptocurrency, it's a digital or a virtual currency. It's minted and secured by cryptography. So this means that there are these very kind of complex systems based in mathematics and stuff that makes the cryptocurrencies impossible or nearly impossible to counterfeit, or makes double spending very difficult and stuff like that. It one way to think about it, I guess, is that it allows, in its purest form, it allows peer-to-peer transactions that are mediated by no government or major financial or financial institution. Governments, of course, don't mint cryptocurrency. This is done purely by privately held technology, at least so far. And it's built on a decentralized network that uses this blockchain technology to store all of the data and match all of the data across a public ledger. So again, no central banks are involved here. This is as private as private markets get.
Yeah, so what kinds of challenges does that pose to sort of tracking illicit financial flows and wrongdoing? And you referenced this a little bit earlier, but what was sort of new about our methodology and approach to doing that?
Sure. So the early days of crypto were, I mean, the space was kind of dominated by both people who were interested innately in the technology, but also a lot of criminals who found this technology very useful, precisely because governments were not involved. The sector was highly unregulated, and the know-how about tracing the transactions remained pretty weak for a long time. The sector has evolved since then, but some of the same kind of challenges still remain. The public records that crypto transactions generate can be very useful to law enforcement and journalists, as we learned. But there are also very deep powers of anonymity within cryptocurrency. So just to kind of put this in more concrete form, we can talk to numerous people in law enforcement and the kind of the crypto tracers that often help law enforcement. And there is just this universal or increasingly common scenario where you have a victim of, say, an extortion or a sophisticated impersonation scam that's lost their life savings to a cryptocurrency address. Well, it's this kind of almost futuristic feeling nightmare or something, where you can see the assets moving across the blockchain. You can see your stolen life savings that's been converted to cryptocurrency moving across sometimes numerous unknown, or what I would call anonymous, cryptocurrency wallet addresses. So there is that element of transparency. However, law enforcement in so many cases has no way to identify the ownership of those wallet addresses, what entity is directing their activities, or the destination, in many cases, of the funds. So this is just what we heard over and over again. The transparency can be helpful, but only to a point when you're dealing with wallet addresses that you cannot identify the ownership of, and of whose assets you cannot seize.
Yeah, talk to me about these conversations with scam victims. I know you and a lot of the reporters on this project spoke to many scam victims about their experiences. Who are sort of these people? Why are they vulnerable? And what kind of recourse do they have?
Yeah, great question. So, the scam victims we talked to were they really ran the gamut. This and a lot of them did not fall into kind of typical categories of a quote unquote vulnerable individual. And this speaks to how sophisticated cryptocurrency scammers have become, or scammers who use cryptocurrency have become. There were victims who were highly functional professionals in their 20s and 30s. And there were victims that we spoke with who really, across all ages and all kind of all status, all walks of life, we were finding victims. So it was almost like I started during the course of this reporting, I started telling my family and friends, like, guys, watch out. So it seems like everyone is vulnerable to this. So please, like, remain vigilant. Don't assume that you're not like vulnerable to falling into one of these scams. And so, we conducted these interviews with dozens of victims who lost their um, life savings, or at least portions of their life savings, to scammers using cryptocurrency wallet addresses to receive those assets. And we found a number of striking things. Probably the most shocking overall was what I would characterize as a total collapse of law enforcement's ability to deal with this form of crime. And this is something that just really, I mean, I think we had one scam victim we interviewed in India who was able to receive their funds back, or a part of their funds back. So there are exceptions to this. But the overwhelming picture we got from both speaking with a lot of scam victims and also law enforcement and crypto tracers who try to help scam victims get their money back is that at the moment, law enforcement is just no match for both the powers of cryptocurrency to quickly move money anonymously, and in many cases across borders, creating jurisdictional problems. And there are a lot of reasons for that. Part of it is that law enforcement is overwhelmed. Part of it is that a lot of the people who would be on the front lines of this, so scam victims, often report their scams to local and state police. In so many cases, these offices do not have the requisite training to take on these cases. And then when the scam victims are then referred on, at least to the United States, to the FBI, those reports are, I mean, I haven't yet talked to a scam victim who has gotten substantial response from federal law enforcement. And that's it's not necessarily a knock on federal law enforcement. It does just seem like there is a resources and a training problem, and it seems like there are a lot of overwhelmed officers out there who are trying to take on these cases.
Yeah. Um, when it comes to sort of the the criminal um activity or like interaction with these crypto platforms, um, what sort of responsibility do these crypto companies have to sort of help deal with this problem?
Well, I mean, I guess there's always two ways of answering that question. There's the legal responsibility, and then just the kind of basic good business responsibility. So from a legal perspective, cryptocurrency, the largest cryptocurrency companies, like the what you would call exchanges, these are essentially the big banks of the crypto world. So they even in this decentralized world of cryptocurrency, they act as kind of central points. So that means that they hold custody of users deposited. It's like a bank. You can deposit funds into these things. You can use them to withdraw. You can use them to trade. And very importantly, you use cryptocurrency exchanges to, in many cases, convert traditional currency or fiat currency into cryptocurrency. So that's a kind of really key thing to remember, because cryptocurrency itself can't, the blockchain without anything else can't use fiat. So you need some mechanism to convert crypto assets into traditional currency. And that, at least for money launderers, using cryptocurrency is often a big goal, in many cases, the ultimate goal, because once you get if it's ill-gotten crypto, once you get it into fiat, into traditional currency, then you're able to spend it in the broader economy, pay your people, invest it in traditional investments and stuff like that. So crypto exchanges in the United States are regulated in a similar manner to banks, but they actually fall under kind of the general category that money service businesses, money transmitters like Western Union do. So banks in the United States are regulated by a consortium of agencies, including the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, the FDIC, and the various Federal Reserve branches. That's just the oversight of their anti-money laundering controls. And cryptocurrency exchanges, because they fall into this category of being money transmitters or what non-bank financial institutions, they are regulated, or they're most directly overseen by FinCEN, which has delegated that responsibility in the United States to the IRS's small business and self-employed division, which is this is a division that has had a track record of struggling to oversee or robustly oversee the activities of cryptocurrency exchanges. And we do know in general that the small business and self-employed division, SBSE, has had a lot of kind of staffing trouble in the past. So what their responsibility is from a purely legal standpoint, they are, the supervisors at IRS, SBSE, are hoping to see that they have established, robust internal controls to make sure that they are catching a reasonable amount of dirty money, so that there are reasonable checks on their accounts, so that they're doing customer checks. They know who their customers are, and they also are getting a good enough sense of their transactions through what we call transaction monitoring to catch, enough dirty money. It doesn't mean every single transaction ever has to be clean, but the overall picture has to be a good one.
You mentioned some of these sort of the conversion of like crypto to fiat currency is sort of a major element here. And I know you did a lot of reporting on the ground, actually, on crypto to cash exchangers. I was wondering if you could share a little bit about your reporting. I know you went to the Middle East and to Europe. What was your experience like, and what did you see?
Yeah, so again, so when you're following money in cryptocurrency, uh, you're always looking for the off ramp. You're looking for the place where the criminal or whoever has the assets that you're looking to trace, you're looking at where they are cashing out, where they are converting that cryptocurrency to standard currency. Um, And so there are a few places to do that. Cryptocurrency exchanges are a big one, and they are the most regulated one, but then there are others. So there's a kind of a slightly in between type thing, and this gets into over the counter trading, and we won't go too much into the digital side of this, but there are people you can there are services or people you can encounter on the internet who you can send them your cryptocurrency and they will send you a bank wire or something like that. So that's one way to cash out the money from crypto to fiat. That would be outside the system of mainstream centralized exchanges. And that is something that obviously fascinates me and I would like to cover in the future more. So anybody on this call with information about, big digital OTC operations, please get in touch. And then there are the physical cash exchangers that we got really interested in. So these are brick and mortar operations or courier services around the world that are operating in both Canada, the United States. I visited them in Poland, uh, Ukraine, and the United Arab Emirates also, that you can walk into for the brick and mortar operations at least. You walk in, you present your cryptocurrency wallet address. You basically connect the crypto wallets via QR codes on your iPhones, and you can, if you're trying to sell your crypto for cash, you send your crypto almost always in the stable coin, which is a crypto pegged to the US dollar, or a stable coin is a crypto pegged to any asset, often the US dollar. The popular stable coin is Tether. So you send the crypto to cash exchanger, however much Tether you want, and then you receive a stack of cash. This is a very loosely regulated area. And in a lot of cases, these exchangers do not ask for any ID. And what I got very, very interested in during the course of this reporting is not only um, the kind of lack of identification on the, like, what you would call the know your customer side of these deals, which would be, these exchanges asking for the customer ID, but also the lack of identification of the cryptocurrency wallet addresses that these operations are using. This gets a little bit into the weeds, but with in TradFi, bank account numbers are generally linked inextricably to the institution itself. In crypto, it is just this very powerful technology that allows anyone to, at the click of a button on their smartphone, create a new cryptocurrency wallet address. This address is known to you, and you understand who the owner of it is because you control it. And in a lot of cases, it is either extremely difficult or impossible for law enforcement, especially given their resources, to understand who controls a cryptocurrency address. There are big exceptions to this, but the addresses that are the most cloaked in secrecy are what you would call self-custody addresses or unhosted wallets, which are outside the ecosystem of the centralized cryptocurrency exchanges and are the sort of cryptocurrency account, if you can call it an account at all, where only the user has access to the public key, which is the cryptocurrency address, and the private key, which is kind of, you can think of as a password. And so the way that the cryptocurrency to physical cash operators work is that, at least in many cases that we analyzed, they change their wallet addresses somewhat frequently. This was especially the case with an anecdotal sample in the United Arab Emirates. And that makes it very hard for law enforcement to track their activity. And so, just a kind of concrete example of this is that if you're tracing funds, say from a scam victim, and those funds end at an unknown wallet address, the police can't do anything about that, or in some cases they can freeze it but not seize it. But this stuff happens pretty quickly also, so a lot of the time freezing isn't really an option. And if the if the crypto to cash operation is changing their wallet addresses frequently, or if they're using a wallet address that's just never been identified, uh, the chances of truly following the money and getting investigative result that is beneficial to the victim becomes just kind of disappearingly small. So going a little in the weeds there, but hopefully some of that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it did. We have a few questions that are coming in, and I'm going to turn to them in a minute. But I did have at least one more for you, Spencer, before we do that, which is going back to sort of the regulatory piece of things. I know we mentioned you spoke a little to sort of where the maybe kind of unique place that cryptocurrency and cryptocurrency companies sort of sit in the regulatory framework here in the US. Obviously, we know there's a global element to this, and you worked with a lot of journalists internationally. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to kind of what regulation looks like on an international level. And since you mentioned a lot of these activities happening across jurisdictions, um, how that what that sort of looks like.
Yeah, the international regulatory picture for crypto, it's very much a patchwork. It is very quickly evolving. The probably the most action, or outside the United States at least, has been in Europe, where there was recently just a big kind of reform that is still being implemented. But the European situation is a lot different from the American, because the governing body there just has a lot less power over the various nation states that encompass the EU. So it and some countries have kind of banned cryptocurrency altogether, or banned crypto trading. Some countries have embraced it. So it is just still this absolutely dynamic and kind of early thing that it's difficult to characterize the overall scene of it, aside from just an absolute patchwork, which obviously doesn't make things easy for law enforcement or the companies themselves. And yeah, uh, so without going into crazy country by country detail, I think that's the best way I can describe it.
Yeah. Um, and then also because, as you sort of alluded to, ICIJ has an extensive background in investigating sort of these illicit financial flows. As you mentioned, sort of this project kind of came out of a past one, Cyprus Confidential. Um, can you speak a little bit to the experience of the experience of doing this investigation, how it built sort of on those past projects, a lot of which you were involved in, and what it was like collaborating with our partners internationally?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's just a lot of continuity here, because ICIJ we have been the newsroom that has focused on the kind of deeper aspects of of wrongdoing out there, and that is how in the most material sense do the most powerful people and most profitable criminals, what is the deeper infrastructure of how they move the material gains, or infrastructure of how they actually do their business. So we were already very plugged into the part of the early reporting here was talking to just a lot of pre-existing sources in law enforcement and anti-money laundering, saying, hey, like what does this look like? What is actually going on here with crypto? And so that was incredibly helpful. And then once we started talking to partners, it really helped a lot because they just every reporter is plugged into their own network of sources. And so, this is it's a different type of project than our previous kind of offshore leaks projects, where maybe we have a tranche of 5 million documents that we spread across our partnership. In this case, this was tapping enthusiasm across newsrooms for reporting on a matter of like very urgent public interest, which is a growing financial sector that's growing in both its reach and its power, both financially and politically. So the this was a collective effort on more kind of shoe leather reporting and data analysis that our partners brought tremendous assets to, in terms of their own networks of sources and also their own like amazing abilities for reporting. I mean, we have the best reporters in our partnership, and we had, for instance, the Toronto Star was able to just a few weeks ago do what I found to just be an incredibly impressive undercover crypto purchase, crypto to cash purchase of $2,000 in hard cash that happened in the Canadian city of Toronto. From a service that had no license to operate there. And we can see on the blockchain moves has moved in recent years more than $10 billion in cryptocurrency. And this service advertises its crypto to cash courier services in apparently unlicensed fashion in cities around the world. Just one more thing on this Canadian example, this service will offer, we found, what you would call a kind of positive cash rate for people providing it cryptocurrency. So that means if you give them, sometimes if you offer to give this service or services like it $10,000 in the cryptocurrency tether, they will offer something like $10,200 in physical cash. Why would there be this positive rate? Usually you pay a fee for exchanging. We talked to money laundering experts who said that not only was the transaction that happened in Canada a violation of money laundering rules, but also that the positive cash rate raises a red flag for money laundering, because it indicates that whatever service is offering such a rate is plugged into a group or a series of groups that has a lot of physical cash that it wants to offload without touching a big bank or a major cryptocurrency exchange, and will pay a premium to do so.
Wow, yeah. Um, all right. I think we're going to dive into some Q&A questions now, Spencer. We had a lot of people submit questions. For our audience, if you're listening, there's a Q&A box. You can submit any additional ones you have now. One that quite a few people asked was, what kind of scams are we seeing most often? How do they pull in victims? And is there anything about crypto that makes people especially vulnerable to fraud compared to traditional financial vehicles?
Um, that's a great question. Um, there are a bunch of different types of scams that use cryptocurrency. The most common one is is what you would call a kind of pig butchering scam, and that's a rough Chinese translation for the kind of process of quote unquote fattening up a pig for slaughter. And what that means is that the scammer, often at the direction of large organized crime groups that run scam compounds in Southeast Asia, um, befriend or flirt with people in other countries via digital means. So they meet people on Facebook or dating apps. They feign romantic interest and pretend to become a person's partner. And this is exploiting people who are lonely and want someone to talk to or want a partner or what have you. Certainly, some of the um, victims of these scams we spoke with had experienced the death of a loved one in prior to the scam happening, or a terrible breakup, or something like that. So there are certainly factors that can make a person kind of more open to a random, digital only connection that can get very deep. And the scammers have become very good at cultivating these connections and making them very deep on a human level. And they'll go for weeks on end, even months before, to build the trust. It's all about trust, to build the trust with the victim. And then they say, hey, they'll drop these little hints like, I've made a lot of money in crypto lately. It's really great. Yada, yada. Like, look at this car I just bought. This is the scammer talking to the victim. And then the scammer will finally kind of drop it on the victim like, hey, do you want to invest in this crypto platform also? It's been yielding incredible results. And so this gets into your kind of second question, which is crypto different or more beneficial for scammers in this way? And in this moment, I think it is, because there's a lot of kind of FOMO out there. There's a lot of fear of missing out. A lot of people don't understand cryptocurrency, but they see the headlines that Bitcoin, at least recently, was going up so much and was minting so many new millionaires and billionaires. And so this kind of investment scam really capitalizes on the intense interest in cryptocurrency and the belief, the very accurate belief that it's made a lot of people rich. So anyhow, the scammer will then direct the person to convert their life savings into cryptocurrency, and they'll have them set up on a website that appears to be a legitimate investment platform. They'll have the person send the cryptocurrency to a wallet address that the person believes is just plugged into the infrastructure of this sleek investment website that has been set up. So the victim on this investment website that they have set up an account on sees their account growing in balance. And the cryptocurrency scammer will often allow the victim to take some initial withdrawals from that platform that will show a profit. So you'll take, $500 out after the first week you invested and say, wow, I just got my money back and my account balance is still growing. Let me just go ahead and put a bigger chunk of my life savings in. So this is a process that can take weeks or months. And the victim continues to see a growing balance on the fraudulent trading website, when in reality, the scammer has been just laundering away their money. The balance is a farce. Their assets are long gone and have been laundered away, often through various hops among anonymous cryptocurrency wallet addresses on the blockchain.
Yeah. Another question that was submitted was asking about the current US administration's more openness towards crypto, but without regulation keeping pace. From your reporting, does that create openings for criminals, or are we seeing stronger oversight coming?
Um, so the current administration is obviously like very pro crypto, and uh, there are some cross currents. So there's a big push to legislatively regulate crypto, and then there is has been a push on the criminal side of things to a cryptocurrency task force of the Justice Department, it's not a task force, a unit that investigated cryptocurrency crimes was disbanded earlier this year. And the Justice Department announced that it would no longer prioritize or pursue cases that on against the actual platforms themselves that process dirty money, basically indicating that the major exchanges were no longer going to be pursued, at least under this administration, or at least under that policy. At the same time, there have been some kind of high profile cryptocurrency busts. I mean, and there was a recent announcement that kind of came just as we were publishing, that the Justice Department was going to set up a new cryptocurrency task force focused on these kind of pig butchering scams and geared toward helping victims. This is just my own kind of what I've gathered and my own impression on this. I think that's a positive step, but I did do some looking around, and maybe the answer is out there, but I couldn't quite get a sense of like how much in additional resources were going to be allocated to this task force. And I do think to meaningfully respond to all of the victims out there who have lost life savings to these scams, and respond quickly, because the money move in crypto, the money moves really fast. Crypto is very good at that, moving money across borders fast. This task force to be truly meaningful is going to need tremendous resources. So I'll be eager to see how that goes.
Speaking of what crypto is good at, one question was, have you learned reasons why anyone who's honest, who's not a criminal, would want to legitimately use cryptocurrency relative to simply using the banking system? It seems as though crypto is mainly geared towards those who are dishonest.
Well, a lot of people invest in crypto as a speculative asset. So there's a lot of honesty and some vulnerability there, of course. I've like before this project, before I even was interested in reporting on crypto, I had a Coinbase account that I bought some Ethereum on because I was interested in buying some crypto personally. So I think I've used crypto honestly before. And the use cases, that it depends what service you're kind of talking about, but when it comes to speculative investment, sure. When it comes to moving money and making payments, it just depends what kind of money you're moving and what kind of payments you're making. So when it comes to crypto, kind of the crypto to cash operations, this is probably where this question has been asked the most. Like, what is the legitimate use case for converting cryptocurrency to physical cash? And a lot of it, I mean, the operators that I visited, they weren't doing normal bank withdrawals. It wasn't people going in and taking out $100 or $500. These were moving big sums of money. One, kind of gritty back room in a deli in Kyiv that I visited that had a crypto to cash operation. Around the few weeks that I visited that operation, its wallet address had an average individual transaction size of 15,000 US dollars, which is twice the Ukrainian average annual salary. Um, so could there be a legitimate use there? Yes, and one person off the record told me that they use these services, or they're aware of people using these services to make remittance payments to countries that are sanctioned. So that's not a legal case. That's not legal to do. That's a sanctions violation. But this person was making the argument that, hey, sometimes people need to get money to their families or what have you. Um, that's one use case I heard of for crypto to cash operations. And so yeah, they could be used for remittances, especially in by people who are in a kind of a cash economy, and who may be receiving income in cash, and whether or not they are reporting that to tax authorities is a different question. But so yeah, there are certainly legitimate cases for crypto, and we were very interested in kind of trying to pin down some of the legitimate cases for the bulk cash conversions. And so any people who have used them legitimately, we'd love to hear from.
We have a couple questions about methodology. One person asked that following the money in crypto often requires advanced tools and technical expertise. What did you find most challenging about that work, and how did you overcome those barriers?
Yeah, so great question. This project took us months of learning to even begin on. And I just, I can't help but to brag on ICIJ here, because um, we have the best data team on earth in journalism. And we also have a group of reporters and managers who are really willing to put their shoulders behind really, really difficult projects, and even projects that might involve some risk. And by risk, I mean, this was something that hadn't quite been done before on this scale. A bunch of journalists tracing a bunch of crypto transactions. In general, journalists have relied more on the major blockchain tracing firms like Chainalysis or Elliptic. Those firms have lots of great people working for them, really advanced tools. They are a little bit hesitant to actually name the major industry players when it comes to any relationship with dirty money, or high risk activity in cryptocurrency. So when we figured this out, we had to kind of we had to create our own methodology in a sense. So this took two forms. Our data team for the really high volume wallets, and these were mainly wallets tied to a Cambodian money laundering organization called the Hui-1 Group. Our amazing data team, Delphine Reuter, Augie, Miguel, big shout out to them. They figured out through a lot of sweat and tears how to pull down bulk data off of these open source crypto blockchain data sources, mainly TronScan and Arkham Intelligence, and spin up Python scripts and stuff like that to do this big data analysis that covered tens of thousands of transactions, tens of thousands of deposit addresses, hundreds of millions of dollars. The other way we did this, apart from the big kind of script-based, API-based analysis that our data team did, was having individual reporters get comfortable working with open source blockchain explorers, and also really understanding the limits of that. So fact checking was really, really important here. So what we kind of came up with was that we would do our own tracing to the best extent possible, but that tracing in most cases was only a means to refine questions to ask the big panel of experts, that individual blockchain experts that we cultivated and worked with to make this project work. So what does that mean? That means we relied heavily on the best experts in the industry, some of them on the record, some of them off the record. We would bring them tracing. We did, and we said, look, this is what we think we see. Can you validate this? Can you advance this? And so by doing that, if you just come to experts, if you come to experts saying, show me the story, like what's the story in crypto, they're generally not going to have much for you. But if you come to them saying, hey, we have this criminal wallet and we have traced the assets here, can you validate that and can you expand on it? Then you're all of a sudden opening up a whole world of leads and investigative findings. So those were kind of the two main pillars of our blockchain tracing, and all of it was done in very close coordination with some, I have to say, some very big-hearted experts who gave a lot of their time to helping us because they thought it was important work.
Yeah, another question about sort of the tools was if do national intelligence agencies have stronger tools than regulators to identify and track crypto transactions? And if so, what advantages do they have?
So when it gets into the kind of deeper intelligence community, it's possible they have some tools that have not been disclosed. I'm not sure. But in general, law enforcement uses the same. Governments have not, at least publicly, created their own tools, or at least in terms of public knowledge. They are reliant on the same big private sector vendors, these blockchain analytics firms like Chainalysis, TRM Labs, Elliptic, Crystal Intelligence, that are the kind of private watch. They've become, in a way, the kind of private sector watchdogs of the cryptocurrency world. And so it is this interesting situation where, because governments haven't created their own tools, um, governments and the law enforcement officials and regulators that work for government are they're at the mercy of both these private sector tools and also the quality of the data that is included in these private sector tools. So the bread and butter of any blockchain analytics tool is going to be the strength of the data that it contains. And what is that data? The most important part of that data is just linking cryptocurrency addresses to real world entities, revealing the ownership of cryptocurrency addresses. Without that, it's just a bunch of meaningless data. And one thing that just fascinated me throughout this reporting was the extent to which, in a lot of cases, according to essentially everyone I spoke with, these tools often fail to identify very important cash out points, including crypto to cash desks, partially because cryptocurrency is an ever-changing landscape and it is just extremely difficult to keep up.
We had another question related to regulation, which was, how can investigations like the coin laundry help lawmakers better understand gaps in financial oversight, especially around crypto?
Oh, I like that question. That dovetails with what I just said. I had a lot of conversations with people in law enforcement who weren't necessarily professional crypto tracers themselves. And they would say things like, oh, crypto is good because it's traceable. And I do think there is a lot of misunderstanding among regulators and even some people in law enforcement who aren't very deep in crypto about the extent to which it is traceable, because that statement is true only to an extent. And the gaps in what you would call the attribution of cryptocurrency wallet addresses, this issue of the major tools not knowing what a lot of cryptocurrency addresses are linked to or owned by, is just this enormous problem. And there is not a lot of great data out there that describes the overall world of cryptocurrency addresses. We know there are hundreds of millions of cryptocurrency addresses, and we know that a pretty big chunk of those are what you would call just unknown addresses. A lot of criminal activity is taking place on the Tron network, which is, according to experts I spoke with, kind of the most opaque in terms of that labeling. There's just not as much what you would call attribution of these addresses. So one thing that lawmakers or that regulators and even some people in law enforcement could take away from this is that, yeah, crypto is traceable. How useful is that if you're tracing to wallet addresses whose owners you can't identify and that have assets that are not possible to seize?
All right. I think that might be the last question we have time for. So thank you, Spencer, so much for this conversation.
Thanks so much, Carmen, and thanks everybody for joining.
Yeah, thank you guys for joining us today and engaging with our work. As I mentioned at the beginning, we're a nonprofit, we're donor funded, which means we really, really do rely on your guys' support and engagement. It's what lets us do these kind of investigations. So if you found the coin laundry valuable and you want to see more of it in the world today, please do consider donating. We actually just published another article from the investigation this morning. So if you'd like to check it out, leave a donation, or learn about our work, you can visit us at icij.org. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, everyone.